Hey, this is Michael Lindsay from Vital MX. I'm here with Steven Tarkowski, and we're out here at Fox Raceway Day. We've actually been at a slew of tracks testing basically Dunlop rear tires. Actually, we did a big time test the other day at GH, but since then we've just been kind of trying out the tires for some thoughts and opinions. But what we did is we took the MX53, which is their hard pack tire, the MX34, which is more their intermediate tire to loam, and then we took the MX14, or as some people like to call that style tire, the scoop tire. Actually, the scoop name is honestly the name for the Pirelli version, but everybody's just kind of gone to that name for this sand looking tire. And this tire in particular, the 14, is kind of what started this conversation, because kind of in following what Pirelli did in Europe, Dunlop pushed to make an MX14 by updating from their 13 to their 14 to a tire that had a little bit more range to it. And honestly, even out here in California, I have a group of buddies who run this tire pretty much anywhere. So we wanted to see, at least in one condition, what the lap time differences were throughout the day. So we basically mounted 3 different rear wheels for the CR450, one with each tire on it, the 53, the 34, and the 14. And we went to GH and we did a 3-lap average at 9 a.m. We did it again at around like 10:30 or 11, and then we did it one more time at 1 o'clock to see, A, if there was really any lap time difference between the 3 tires and how much that changed throughout the day. And then also even just our opinion. And again, we've been riding the tires a little bit at a couple different tracks. So Stevie here did the lap time war. I timed him, and we're actually going to start out, we'll pretty much jump right into that because that's what really caught my eye when we did this. So start off 9 a.m., perfectly fresh track. What was your seat of the pants thought first off by riding all 3 tires?
It's tough to feel like you're going a lot faster, in my opinion, like especially when it's a second or two. Like it's very tough for me to think that, oh yeah, that was a second faster. But just seat of the pants, I did feel a little faster with the scoop tire, just because of how it drives out of corners, and I felt like I was physically going a little faster down the straightaways.
Yeah. So the morning one doesn't shock me. GH is in its perfect prep condition. You got great berms, you have the hills. Pretty much the average tire that the majority of consumers are running, or are running somebody's intermediate version of the tire, an MX34. You ran a 1 minute 56.17, so a 56.17. You had a 56.99 and a 56.59 on the MX34. So low to high 56. We moved to the 53. Very similar. The hard pack tire actually performed extremely similar that time. More in 56.1, 57.1, 56.11. So about a second difference, a little bit bigger range than the 34 on the 53, the 53 being the hard pack. But then the tire in question, we moved to the scoop, the 14, 154.7, 154.2, and 154.7. So a second and a half on average better, with peak lap time being almost 2 seconds better. Again, GH, where do you think most of that is? Is just drive on hills, straightaway? Like, where does it kind of seem from your perception?
I think a little drive down the straightaways, but then some of it in the corners, exiting corners, getting in with a little more traction, a little more planted feel. And yeah, just a little bit everywhere around the track.
So again, the morning lap time doesn't surprise me. I'm going to go through real quick, and we're going to run through the other 2 times of the day we did lap time, and then we're going to talk about, me and you've spent a bunch of time now on these tires, just like what some of our opinions and how I'd actually recommend somebody to maybe make a further choice. Because again, I think up until this generation of scoop tires, most people thought, oh, you only run these when it's really sandy out.
Yeah.
But as we learned in this, that's not quite the case. So the second run on the 14, a little more variance. I remember you had a lot of traffic on your opening lap.
Yes.
It was a 2 minute 0.67, but then you had a 158.8 and a 159.3. Big drop off from the morning, but GH had broke in. This is like 2 hours later.
Yes.
So again, our peak time is a 58.8. The 53 second run was best time of 58.9, then a 59.6 and a 59.2. So a little over a second difference. And then the second run on the 34, 158.2, 157.8, 157.8. So like middle of the day conditions, 34 did what's kind of supposed to. It works around an average of the day. Kind of interesting because morning, when it's just all straight line drive, 14 performed really well. The other tires were farther off. Middle day, broken in lines, a little more to work with. A little bit tighter on those lap times, not as big of a difference. Does that make sense to you? Like, as
Yeah.
what you remember the track as
Yeah,
racing?
because there was some more lines now. There was a little bit of ruts, and it was the 14 does have a little bit of more rider input to keep it lean.
Yeah.
So with the 34 is a little easier, a little more less effort for me to stay in the rut. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. We also did this same run because we did most of this on the Honda. I'm just trying to look. We had some Yamaha times in here too. So final run of the day on the Honda. This is around 1 o'clock. So this is where I was curious because again, you think, okay, we're on the West Coast. GH isn't blue groove, but it gets blown out.
It
gets very blown out. Gets kind of hard packed. Gets skatey. I thought the 53 would start to come into play at some time. Now that lines are gone and you're banking, this is what got interesting. So starting with the 34, 59.7, 59.2, and a 2-minute.3.
I was tired.
Yeah, it's hard. We were losing there a little bit. The 53's third run. This is where I really thought this tire was going to come into play, but it didn't. 2-minute.8, 201.0, and a 2-minute.2.5. So drop off to a lap, just pretty much on average a second off of the 40 or the 34. So again, coming back to the scoop can't have traction at the end of the day, right? No, peak time at the end of the day was a 158.3 on the scoop. We also did a 58.4 and a 59.3. So your worst lap on the scoop was as good as your best lap on the 34, but your best lap on the scoop was over a second better still at the end of the day. Why, again, at the end of the day, does the scoop come back into play?
I think just the traction exiting corners. Like, I was blown away. Like, going up the first hill, you hit Talladega, come down tight left, and then drive up the hill. It was rocky, completely hard pack, and I expected that scoop just to slide everywhere. And I'd come out of that corner, get on the gas, and it would just shoot me straight up that hill. And I feel like I gained a second right there. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I'm no engineer, but something about that tread just gets traction and keeps you driving forward.
I think what reminds me when you're picking tires, like the tires are termed based off the soil you're encountering. And I think a lot of guys think they never get away from like an intermediate-ish tire because they think, oh, I could pick something that's better at the beginning of the day that's going to be worse at the end. It's reminded that the dirt you're dealing with, even as it breaks down or compacts or whatever, is still to like a certain level like that. Like if we were to do this test again, I would probably try it also at like Paris Raceway where we actually get true blue groove to see, okay, where does the 53 come into play where, again, full sand, like the material you have is kind of the material you have. It will change throughout the day, but you're actually not going to see as much of a change in performance like I thought we would. The interesting thing though is, so like I said, we've rode the tires a bit since then. So in saying this, am I saying everybody should just go buy a scoop tire if it's not blue groove? Yes and no in a sense. So what I was thinking about is interesting. Everybody's always talking about wanting to get like Dunlop just did the factory spec tire, which we're going to do a comparison test on that very soon as well. We just got another batch of them. Like, if a tire could make me a second a lap faster. Well, a scoop just made you a second to second and a half lap faster. I look at this kind of tire like, okay, if you're racing all the time, they're great off the start too.
Yeah, I was going to say, and it's going to help you a ton off the start.
And if the dirt is within a decent range, even at the end of the day, if you learn how to ride one, that's the thing, it rides different. If you learn how to ride it, yes, it can be faster. Now, however, like what we ran into with GH is when you do, even though it will work when it starts to get blown out and a little bit more hard pack, the wear does get pretty gnarly on that center knob, and you're relying so much on that center knob. If it wears down, it changes the shape of the tire, a few things. So my joke is it's almost like having a spec tire if you're not in true sand. Like, it is going to be fast. It's going to be fast as hell in a straight line. Yeah. But it will kind of wear a bit quicker. So that's something to think about. So I'm not saying like everybody should go buy a scoop to go practice on. If you see in the video, if you're riding like West Coast stuff, like a GH, a Fox Raceway, you might actually, if you stay late through the day, you're going to blow out the tire a little bit. If you're racing, however, there is a big proponent to getting used to this. I've talked to a bunch of guys that are racing nationals this year, and more guys are getting that mindset like, shit, I need to learn how to race on this tire all the time because it's so good off the start. It's so good in the opening moto, but it still actually isn't. They're all figuring out it's not that bad at the end of the day. No. So that came to play to me. Like, if you had somebody come up to you and saw this on your bike at the track and asked you like, should I run one or not? Like, what feedback or advice would you give them?
I would tell them yes, but you do have to learn a little bit of a different cornering character. So it's not going to lean as easy and stay at lean angle like it would as a 34, and it doesn't have, it has a little less comfort when the track gets rough because of the tall tread. You do feel a little more of the bumps, but if you're looking for just overall drivability out of corners and traction feeling, I think this is a great option. And even I like to scrub and slide the rear wheel off some lips.
Yeah.
And I was at first a little hesitant, like, oh, it's gonna grab me or something, and it didn't do that at all. Like, I felt very confident, just as I did with the 34, scrubbing off stuff. And yeah, I think the biggest thing is the cornering.
Yeah. The one I noticed, so I ran it a bit on a 250F the last couple days, that private track we've been riding, and like, when we went back this last week, it got like back drug with like a metal bar grader, and it left a lot of like really stuttery chop. The stiffer carcass was noticeable there. Like, it definitely doesn't have as much comfort and absorption on corner entry, like basically on just back, like I feel like bigger chop that's more spread apart, it's not as noticeable against the 34, but real back-to-back like small chatter, to put it bluntly, I felt like I was dribbling a basketball a little bit. Like, it was just a little bit stiff and like reactive to that, to the point that I was saying, like, one of the Dunlop guys made a really good point that they went to Loretta's last year, and a bunch of dads came up and were like, oh, we need a scoop for the start. And the first thing they asked them, like, has your kid ever even raced this tire? No. It is, like, if I were to run one, if I was racing thinking, like, oh, I see an advantage here, I like how it is, you want to run it pretty often to get used to it. Because I honestly would say I would change, like, I'd probably play around with the shock setting.
I was just going to say the same
thing. If I was running all the time. Like, I definitely was playing with, soften and playing with rebound a little bit just because of how it reacts off stuff. And the tire also, the scoop takes quite a bit more break in. That sidewall is stiff enough on to support, because they don't want that tire to fold and soft stuff. They want to keep its form and scoop. I definitely run a little bit lower pressure first to try to almost soften up the tire and try to get it to break in a little bit quicker.
And it is more difficult to change. I will say that.
Don't remind me of that. I will say I'm not the best tire change in the world, but it took me a solid 45 minutes to change one the other night on a 250. I was not a happy camper. It reminds me of changing, like going to Glam as like an old school actual paddle tire. Like, it is a little bit on the tougher side to change, that is for sure.
Now, I do think if you are a slower rider and you like to do a lot of point and shooting and you're not on your lean angle as much, I think this is an even better tire for you.
Yes.
Because you're not leaned over, you don't have to deal with the cornering, and if you point and shoot, I think you're really going to notice this tire.
Because I was thinking about too, like, on one hand, I would say because of the braking performance, like the track I was thinking of, like the tighter corners, I notice it more, but at the same time, if the corner is set up where it's just very point and shoot, you might lose a little bit on decel control, like, or basically any braking zones into a corner, you might have to be a little more gentle. Actually, one thing it taught me is I definitely was more off the rear brake with it.
I've never been off my rear brake, so I don't know.
We're very aware, Stevie. I'm surprised we haven't. How are we doing on the brake pads on this?
We're probably going to need some soon.
Yeah, you just prep this and it almost does need them. Yeah, Stevie likes, if you watch the slow-mo on the video, Stevie thinks the rear brake pedal is another foot peg sometimes.
It's like my clutch sometimes.
Me, on there, like, I definitely was off it more, because when you get it locked, again, you feel that, like, very reactive feel to it when you get that tire locked with the scoop on it. So, roundabout way, am I saying the scoop tire is magic and everyone needs to go buy one? No, the MX14 is not that. However, it was still eye-opening to me, like, hey, it can be used throughout a whole day. If it works in the morning, it's still probably going to work in the afternoon, more than likely. Even if the material goes away, like we found at Glen Helen, if you can point and shoot and you can find stuff to accelerate off, it can be worth it. But again, it also takes a little bit different riding. Some people are going to ride this tire, and possibly if it's outside stand, if they are a heavy lean angle guy and they're a big roll speed guy and they aren't big throttle openings, they don't point shoot, you may not even like it in general. However, if you adapt to it, you may dig it. Now, I will say the funnier one I think I answered out of this, that why I want to do this test again. I'm not like, this isn't the end all be all. We did it GH with a bike. The hard pack tire is truly something that needs to be in its own direction, is the other thing I learned out of this. Like, the 53 didn't have any tire works decent in the morning. That's the one thing I learned. All three tires worked really good in the morning, though the scoop had an advantage. Even the 53 was really good. But the 53, the hard pack tire never came into its true own unless we could actually find real blue grooves. So it's as simple as, I know there's probably people back east that ride like really loamy, really soft, and they look at like when we're always testing at Fox or testing at GH, like, oh, that looks like hard pack trash. No, there is still worse hard pack you can find than this. Go watch somebody riding in France, I guess. Like that's where a 53 comes into play, I guess.
Yeah, I was actually expecting the end of the moto. It was getting hard pack. I was like, okay, the 53 is going to come around. And I still had the least amount of traction, especially going up the hill. It would break very easily. And I was blown away at how well the 14 worked in those situations.
Yeah, so I guess because like I said, I think everybody is very much like, we're all creatures of comfort. At a certain point, we find something we like, we stick with it, which whether we're talking about the Dunlop brand or not, I feel like most people find an intermediate tire of whatever brand they like. That's what they run. They know it's going to work pretty well everywhere. They're not going to think about anything else. But I do have people come up to me and go, oh, like, track's getting pretty blown out. Like, should I try a hard pack tire? Well, now my recommendation would actually be the opposite is, hey, have you ever like, of the two tires, which could actually be a bigger performance advantage? I recommend more people just like give a 14 or give some type of scoop tire a try. That's basically what I come to a conclusion out of this is, it is very different than what you think. My thoughts on riding it and stuff prove that, and the lap times did.
And I think the lap time test was awesome. I was actually reading the forum last night about weight. People wanted to add weight and do a test on that. And because I could feel difference performance, but knowing that I was actually faster with the scoop tire lap time wise all throughout the day really made me like, okay, this thing is better to me, for my opinion. Not just feeling wise, you know. It
was funny because we had another topic where the tire thing came up, and I mentioned we were recording this day, and I kind of threw out what the base result was. And a couple guys were like, holy crap, like a second a lap or 2 seconds a lap, like I'd kill for that. And then one guy was like, oh, a second a lap isn't worth it.
I know. You're gonna have that.
I don't know. I work pretty hard. I've done some lap time wars with myself out here where I have to try really, really hard to find a second. I'll take the second on the tire. So if you have any other thoughts or comments, throw them in the comment section below. Biggest thing is, like I said, we want to do more. We have a couple more tire comparisons coming up. We're going to do the AT82 front versus 34 front. The AT82 front is the tire like the Lawrence's and Deegan. If you guys have been running, it's actually an off-road tire, but it's become pretty popular in moto. We're going to do a factory spec test as well against the standard tires with lap times. But what other tires would you like to see? I think this is a simple one. We test tires individually, but not a lot of straight up comparisons. So if you have any other either thoughts or lap time comparisons you want to see, throw them down there. We'll try to get to them. As always, if you like our content, like, subscribe. Thanks for watching.